I believe that we're actually, everything is energy, primarily, and the physicality is secondary. And I think there's many layers to the onion, so to speak, and that shamanic dreamers have unlocked the capacity to go into these other layers. The Toltecs refer to this as a vision that we're having, and this vision is unique and powerful, but it's a holographic projected reality.
What percentage of today's nuclear weapons out of the 13,000 would it take to destroy all the significant size cities in the world and send the world into a nuclear winter for over a decade? We have 50 times today. And then we would ask ourselves, is humanity still making these weapons?
The thing that's going to protect me from the people that have discovered this, that, and the other. I trust deeply in my personal power to be insulated because I'm following my signs, omens, and feelings, and I'm being guided. And therefore, I know that I'm walking very closely with God. I'm not separate.
We need to allow love to conquer our own fears, radiate a lot more luminosity ourselves, and therefore we transcend their power over us completely.
So the flyers are the ones that run the foreign installation, which is that second mind that's not natural. And for us to come out of that mind and find our natural mind, then the flyers are no longer able to be higher on the food chain. Aloneness is all oneness. And so we need to spend time alone. We need to spend time alone without distraction. I practice a lot of shamanic dreaming practices where you have to be alone. They're just designed that way. And it can be really uncomfortable at times.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. I'm very excited today that I have a guest, Joel Schafer, who Mark Gober actually introduced me to. So you saw him on episode number 2. He's become one of my best friends. I always joked with him when I first reached out. I didn't know him at all in February. Just a big fan of his books, that my sneaky, undertone was to get him to move to Austin. That actually happened. And he and I just went to a show, an Austin City Limits taping recently. I think that's the third one that we attended. And you may remember from episode 2 that when we saw Cam together, there was this crazy amount of synchronicity between the conversation we just had and the taping. And literally every song she played replayed the conversation we just had, and neither one of us had ever seen her as she played her album that night. We had never even heard of her music, but it was really cool. And I'm coming off of the Henry Crown Fellowship week. You saw Vishal on the last episode from Obvious Ventures, and he's just fantastic. And that night, actually, after we recorded, we went to go see Byron Reese speak about utopia. You saw him as well on this podcast, and he's one of my favorite authors. And it was such a cool setting because Byron was literally sitting by a fire at Mickey Agrawal's home. Mickey's a good friend of mine. We're investors in our company, Hero. And the crowd there was kind of like more Mickey's age. So it was like in kind of early 30s. And it was just so cool because it was like story time with with Byron Reese. And one of the things that happened there is that all of this younger generation, they just completely believe that we're going to make it to utopia. It was just so cool to see how optimistic they were. And I think that's important to see because a lot of people are very pessimistic about younger generations. I actually am the opposite. I'm extremely optimistic about, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, and they are deeply rooted in love and purpose. And one of the things that I saw just recently, I just shared this yesterday, is that social media usage for the youngest generation is falling precipitously. So they're finally starting to break out of this algorithmic manipulation machine, which is keeping the amygdala hijacked, making us believe that we live mostly in a dystopia. In a world of 8.2 billion people, most of the things that are happening are acts of love and connection, but those aren't newsworthy. They're not exceptional. And so we're just pushed all the worse stuff. And in a world of 8.2 billion people, is something bad going to happen every day? Yeah, something bad is going to happen every day. And that's horrible. But we can choose to program ourselves on all of that, or we can choose to let the light in and realize that most of what's happening in the world is amazing. Also, as of this recording, as listeners know, I'm Jewish, although I really identify with the spiritual roots of all religions. And literally, I woke up this morning around 5 a.m. and really celebrated the release of the hostages. And I'm really praying for a lot of peace now to come in Gaza, as well as Israel, as they transcend the terrorist Hamas group. And that's not giving a pass to the far right in Israel. Israel also has to transcend that. As you know, politically, I'm very much a centrist, and I believe in rationality. And I call out, where I see hate, whether it's on the right or the left, or whether it's in any country, because we really need to listen to our soul in terms of what's right or wrong. And we know what's right or wrong if we just listen and feel that energy. So thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate all of the amazing comments I'm getting on this work. I'm not doing this for advertising or any financial gain. I'm purely doing this for the love of humanity. So if you feel moved, share this with a friend, and maybe it'll make a big impact in their life as they start to walk a either spiritual path or even one with a curiosity about what consciousness is. I mean, there's so much work coming out on this, including Dan Brown's book, which I think is called The Secret of Secrets. I haven't started reading it yet, but I know it's about non-local consciousness, and just more and more people are talking about that, which I think is really, really cool. So thanks again for tuning in. I'm here with Joel Schafer, and real honor to be with you, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being in. So I've listened to a number of your interviews just to prepare for this, and that was really fun to do. And I want to start out with a question to just jump to something that I think is on everybody's mind as they listen to this podcast. You've done a lot of work to try to grapple at what is the nature of our reality. So what do you think is this reality that we're in?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I believe that we're actually, everything is energy primarily, and the physicality is secondary.
Yeah.
And I think there's many layers to the onion, so to speak, and that shamanic dreamers have unlocked the capacity to go into these other layers. And so the Toltecs refer to this as a vision that we're having. And this vision is unique and powerful, but it's a holographic projected reality. They learn to unbind from the physical limitation, and they do things that, are quite terrifying at first, but really liberating ultimately, because when you realize you're not primarily in a physical universe, then the secrets of this realm unlock, and you start to be able to traverse and travel. And I believe that we're meant to be able to do that, but something got a hold of us and is keeping us from that discovery. There's great pressure on us to not unlock the secrets of lucid dreaming. So I would say we're having a vision. This is a dream, and that we're actually inside of a memory right now, that everything's already happened. It's not linear, but there's many, many timelines. So there's deviations from different experiences. So you and I may have already had this conversation many times. And it's just a matter of waking up to that potential so that we're not in sort of under hypnosis forever. And that's what in the books of Castaneda, Don Juan says, if we don't discover the secret of perception, then we will perish. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate what your focus is as far as saving humanity with the benefits of technology and all that. I also look at that as a possibility, but I'm more of the realm that we need to become liberated through our dreamscapes, our ability to seek the other layers of the onion through conscious lucid dream travel. So yeah, I think we're in a very incredible realm that's magical. And I think our capacity to connect back directly to source and have a profound ability to communicate with the earth, with the sun, mm-hmm. and with source itself is where, all those secrets are presented, but they're not things that really words speak to properly. It's more like a direct feeling, and our ability to know things directly. We call it silent knowledge, where you move outside of the realm of thought and you start to perceive energy directly as it flows. And so I think that, we're in a system that is intelligent and we're being communicated with, but we're not able to receive that communication to the degree that we will need to. And so, I think it's just an incredible energetic place that is serving as a platform to launch into what we call the afterlife, and that there's a way to merge the afterlife with this layer of the onion, and we can start to have visitations from other beings and other support systems. We're not alone here. We share this place with many, many different beings that are not physical. And in a sense, those beings have an advantage because we are in a limited capacity. I think there's interfering energies as well as supportive energies. So I think it's a very expansive place.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I love about what you just said is I've been on just a massive reading journey, and my soul is really animating my physical body, this physical vessel, to do that.
Yeah.
And what you just said syncs incredibly well with our understanding of quantum physics.
Cool.
That everything, when you go down to the quantum level, is just light and energy.
Yeah.
And we only know what 4% of the universe is made of, as you know, from Mark Gober, right? 96% we call dark energy and dark matter. We have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
The head of the quantum computing division of Google last year, this guy Harmit Neven, when they showed a stable quantum computing calculation, and then they came out with a quantum computing chip called the Willow chip, which computed in 5 minutes, which would take a classical supercomputer, which just depends on ones and zeros, which are called bits versus qubits, which are multidimensional. They're in a superposition type of state. It would take a classical supercomputer, this 5-minute calculation, 782 trillion times the known age of the universe. It's 10 septillion years.
Wow. And
he said on the stage at TED in Vancouver, he said, the only thing we can figure out at Google is that it's computing in a different dimension. So these are things that would have been heretical, you know. I mean, those are the types of things maybe that would have gotten people canceled in a computing division, you know, decades ago. But I love that humanity is opening up more as we become more knowledgeable about quantum physics. And, you know, for someone like Max Planck, who was the patriarch of the field, he became very spiritual as a result of diving into quantum physics.
Wow.
And so,
sure,
you know, you're very deep in this knowledge of the Toltecs, and it's really cool to see how well it relates to actually our scientific understanding. Part of the suffering I see in the world right now is the dogmatic separation between science, which is also based on an act of faith, you know, grant me the miracle of the Big Bang and I'll explain everything else to you.
Yeah.
And the separation between religion, which requires a lot of belief and a lot of stories, but the root of all religions seem to be really synchronous.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the Toltecs refer to something called the dark sea of awareness, and that we can visit the dark sea as a preparation for our death. So I think shamans have been trying to, in their own way, prepare us for the scientific discoveries that were to come. And I think they've been ahead of the curve as far as being able to see the nature of reality. But they speak of it in a way that's a little esoteric or a little woo-woo. And so people have a hard time believing it until, you know, our technology is able to measure these things.
Right.
So I think our ability to bridge those two worlds is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things I talked about in The Lattice, which is my science fiction novella. I wrote this actually from a vision in a psychedelic journey.
Yeah.
Where I saw what would be the collective awakening for humanity. And it's actually triggered through technology.
Yeah.
So it's in the novella, it's what happens is this guy, Dr. Alexander Bliss, who's a quantum physicist and has published, 23 papers. He goes on a psychedelic journey for the first time. He thinks this is going to be neurochemical tricks.
Yeah.
And instead, he sees what I call in the book the lattice.
Yeah.
And the lattice is the interconnectedness of all things, the unity of all things.
Yeah.
And the book covers the years 2030 through 2085, and it continues to be rediscovered over and over again. But one of the cool things that he has an idea for to get humanity to wake up is he hooks brain-computer interfaces to the Dalai Lama, psychonauts, deep meditators, et cetera, and it all shows the same repeating pattern as he uploads the data into this massive, processing engine, with quantum computing at its core, to look for the repeating patterns between all of those visions. And he premieres it at a documentary film festival in Telluride. It's actually a real festival called the Mountain Film Festival.
Yeah, I've been there.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I used to live in Telluride.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a good friend, Michael Collins, who's going to be on this podcast pretty soon, who serves on the board there. That's how I found out about it. He's a documentary filmmaker. That's going to be a fascinating discussion because his new documentary is really amazing that he's working on right now about intuition and how that can be taught to children,
Yes.
Especially in these schools in India, where they can navigate source, but they have to be a certain age and not already subject to so much programming that we receive. But anyways, he airs it there, and humanity sees it, and it's undeniable scientific proof of the reality that we're actually in.
Wow.
They never quite decode the reality, even by the year 2085. And I think we need to be deeply humble about the fact that, whatever the nature of God is, we know it's deeply rooted in love, but it's so far beyond our comprehension. And that's one of our beliefs too in Judaism is it's ineffable, it's nameless, we have to just be humble in whatever it is, but just be thankful that it is rooted in love, which is, I think, really beautiful.
Absolutely.
Have you seen that as you dove into, different spiritual roots, that whatever the reality is, that it is rooted in love by, whatever the prime creator is?
Yes. Yeah. It's a really profound emotional experience to be in communication with source in that way. And I find the creator force to be very psychedelic and humorous. I've had a lot of breakthroughs with communicating with the sun, and I believe the sun is consciousness and the earth mother is consciousness. And then these beings are, connected directly to what we call spirit, and spirit is God, creator force. And it's providing the most incredible waves of affection, what we call pure affection.
Yeah.
And there's a way through celibacy and different ways of saving your sexual energy for that kind of conversation. Many religious people and spiritual people have had communication that's direct, and it is very much something that is unspeakable and nameless, and yet it's present, and it's an incredible thing to become just in contact with. So in the books, Don Juan talks about how just keeping our flame intact, keeping our fire alive is enough. We don't have to be as powerful as, the creator itself, but to just be in the presence is all that the goal is.
It's deeply humbling. I mean, when I had the first, I've had a lot of, I've done prayer growing up, but I wouldn't say that I was overly religious by any stretch. And I've had like moments of awe and that feeling where my whole body lights up. But in a particular journey, it was actually my third journey. It was the one where I had this direct connection with God. And I spent the next day with a deep level of humility and a lot of tears, not sad, but tears of joy. And I knew that at that moment I was meant to be a vessel. And it's a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I really do have a deep love for all humanity. And part of that came from this knowing that God has a deep love for all humanity, that God looks at all of us as equals, like divine beings at our core. Some people have a amazing, sad amount of programming. A Hamas terrorist literally is indoctrinated since they're born in hatred. But that happens in extreme religions around the world too, that people can be indoctrinated like that.
Yeah, that's it's part of this realm, is that kind of that those soul contracts, they come in order to experience that level of, indoctrination as a means to potentially have a near-death experience or something that might heal a person. So there's a lot of really challenging elements to this place that Toltecs say this is a world of terror and beauty, but the beauty balances the terror.
Right.
And so it's a matter of each individual potentially evolving their soul in each lifetime. And some of those contracts are near impossible to get out of, but there's still potential for the slightest bit of growth that could lead to the next lifetime.
Right.
And so I think we're in a really profound, confronting, and realistically tragic, but also beautiful experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mark Gober's second book on living,
Mm-hmm.
when the first time I met him and the first time he visited Austin, it's just obvious he's manifesting love.
Yeah.
That he really is a very loving person, rooted in that.
For sure.
And I'm curious how that relates to what you've studied with the Toltecs and also the Toltec journey you've been on for understanding ancient spirituality and the synchronicity between it.
Yeah. I studied Taoism a lot, and I studied the Toltec stuff primarily, and it's just been,
I love the Tao.
yeah, it's been just a really beautiful thing to discover what we call the not doings. So in our daily lives, we're doing, thinking. There's a way to come out of that and experience a very psychedelic thing without any substances whatsoever. And that's where the Toltecs discover this realm of pure affection, where conversations can be had with beings from other layers of the onion. And they actually say we don't have lifetime after lifetime. They're all parallel lives rather than reincarnation.
Yeah.
And if you can gain access to your parallel life, there's a boost that happens for you and for that parallel being. So in dream time, you can cross certain gates. And through conscious dreaming, you can walk into other layers of the onion. And if you meet your parallel being, it's very emotional. It's very beautiful. It's very healing to realize that you are many, that there's a multiplicity to what we are.
Right.
And the conversations are non-linear. They're not with words, but they're like almost like just through your tears of really being in an emotional connection. And the most profound waves of affection and love lead to direct guidance, where you're being told and shown what your purpose and meaning is. And I think so many people in this world don't know what the meaning is, and they don't have purpose. And so they're seeking to fulfill their lives that feel empty with either money, sex, power, or something as a means to make meaning. And we can get really lost if we don't have the capacity to heal our hearts. And we all have armor from having been broke up with or having had something happen with our parents. At a young age, we were told to stop doing that, and our ability to express ourselves got stifled. And so finding a way to unbind from that armor and to dance and to sing and to create art and to, have purpose and direction like you've discovered, that's what ignites your fire and leads to the most incredible capacity to feel love. And the more people that gain access to this universal love, the 100th monkey thing kicks in. And so even though fear is spreading like wildfire, courage can also spread like wildfire. And
so well said.
Yeah. So just a matter of time.
I really love that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of time before we tip. And, I'm 95% certain that we do tip, but if I could wave a magic wand, my wish for all of humanity is that collectively everybody's physicality would have a communion with their soul, where they knew that they knew the divine purpose that they were born for or incarnated for.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really synchronizes well with what you said, and I was recommending this book to you before we went on air, but you should really read LSD and the Mind of the Universe. I mean, he's a real pioneer. He was willing to die to understand the nature of our reality. And at the end of his journeys, he was told that the reason that God, he calls God my beloved, took him through that linear progression over a 20-year period was to show him the layers of reality so that he could communicate it to the rest of humanity. And he's a deeply humble person. If you ever see him on podcast, I'm going to invite him on here. I haven't talked with him about it yet, but that book had a profound effect on me. In chapters 9 through 11, which I've read now 3 times, about the birth of the future human and the diamond soul, is what he's seen is that we're in an evolutionary shift. We're built for evolutionary speed. I mean, the Homo sapiens have been around for 250,000 or 300,000 years, and we're the fastest evolving animal ever.
Sure.
And that this evolutionary shift is going to lead to this diamond soul where we can access all of our lifetimes in one. And it syncs exactly perfectly with what you're saying, which is just so cool.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I mean, it's a big reason why my soul's had me do all this reading is that I think part of my purpose, I know my purpose in this lifetime is to create a better world through technology, but I also think part of my purpose is to help bridge and bring back together science and spirituality. Yeah. Where we realize that there's immense synchronicity in these things versus dogmatic separation. And I just, it's kind of blowing my mind right now that it syncs so well with what you've learned, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I refer to it as techno-magic. It's just a different form of magic, and magic is not new. It's ancient. It's always been. And so we are a technology in a sense. And the Toltecs refer to us as having an assemblage point, this sphere within our luminous cocoon that moves. And shamans have learned to move that consciously so that they can walk right in and out of this world.
Right.
And our ability to do that so that we're not relying on a substance. Like in the movie Inception, they have to give them the substances in order to go deeper in the dream world. I believe that we're going to need to be able to do it that way as well as the natural way.
I agree.
And so it's great that people are all taking their psychedelic journeys right now, but it needs to be integrated eventually so that we become really superhuman and have the capacity to directly know things like the Akashic records are available. You know, we don't have to carry books around with us in the future. And I don't think we need to download our consciousness into the cloud, although some people are going to do that. I think there's ways to balance that by people discovering it, you know, in other ways. So I believe forces rise to meet each other. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're susceptible to someone hacking us.
Right.
But we're already being hacked through interdimensional beings that are interfering with us. Shamans learn to stop allowing those interdimensional beings to have access to them by saving their energy in a way that makes it so that those forces find, through their discipline and impeccability, that they're become non-palatable, or you lose the interest in feeding off of that energy. So most of humanity, according to the Toltecs, is being fed off.
Right.
That we're not the top of the food chain. Mm-hmm. And in order to not perish as a race, we're going to have to evolve so that we're not being fed off to the degree that we have been, and come to terms with the fact that we're not alone here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, one of the things I do want to say is that I have friends that used to do psychedelics who have transcended the need for it. They've got into a meditative state. Yeah. I'm actually doing a trip in Bali coming up at the end of April of next year, and there's a guru there that I don't really know a lot about his tradition. He's from India, but apparently he can manifest in you what is like 40 years of meditative practice in one touch, which sounds incredible. But, you know, I know people that have visited with him and done that, and it transcended their desire, need, whatever you want to call it, for psychedelics, because now they're in that state. And I know that is in my future too, that this is a bridge to get there. Mm-hmm. And I've never had an addictive personality for anything. It's kind of funny because my journey last year led to the lack of any type of craving for alcohol.
Oh, wow.
I used to drink, moderately. I was never an alcoholic, but every time, at a doctor's office, for a physical, it asked me, and I would be honest. I was very honest. I would be like, oh, probably 5 to 6 drinks a week.
Yep.
I live a very social life as a CEO, and
Sure.
been a CEO since I was 24. I'm 53 now.
Yeah.
And it just killed the craving. And it was about a 4-hour journey, and there was just a 10-second part of it. The place I go, you speak out loud and then you transcribe it.
Mm-hmm.
And this 10-second part was me looking at my body, kind of out of body experience, and saying, protect the vessel. It's just poison. You don't need this anymore socially. You've transcended it. And it just, boom. It's like it just killed the taste, I'll still have, like, for ceremonial, like Passover.
Yeah.
But I don't actually feel good the next day, even if I just have one drink. And I probably had, since that journey, maybe one drink since November of last year. I think it was on Passover, and that was it.
Yeah.
So it's, that communion is really important. But ultimately, if we all could just have that constant communion with our soul, that would be incredible. And do you feel like you've reached that state yourself where you're having a regular communion with your soul?
Yeah, we call it living in heightened awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really, I had extremes for a long time in my apprenticeships where I would be really in a deep, profound state of clarity for a few days in a row, and then I would lose it, and it'd be like, what happened? And we did a lot of sweat lodges and vision quests and ceremonies in order to stay in heightened awareness. But it feels very terrifying to reach those states and then to lose them at times, and that desperate feeling of like, well, what's going to happen if I don't get back there, and those kinds of experiences. But over the years, I've learned to steadily do these shamanic movements that keep me in that altered state all the time. I had a profound experience in my job where I was, as a project manager for a construction company, I was just explaining something in a conference room, and all of a sudden my perception moved to a very psychedelic state of perception. And I was able to still pretend as if I was having a normal experience and continue with my presentation while having direct conversation with God at the same time.
Yeah.
And it just was kind of a multitasking moment where I realized that I don't have to be on my knees in tears, in order to be in that state. I can do 2 things or even 3 things at a time. And some people I know can do many things at one time, or they're having conversations with their parallel life.
Yeah.
They're also in an interview. They're also, doing this other thing in their dream state. Some people occupy 6 different positions of perception at one time through extreme fasting. So shamans work with sleep deprivation, fasting, all kinds of different things in order to stay in a permanent heightened state. And then they refer to something called unbending intent.
Right.
You learn to have a relationship with what they call intent.
Right.
And eventually you can have what's called unbending intent, which means that your will is fully activated at all times. And some shamans learn to be conscious 24 hours a day. So even when they're asleep, they're totally conscious of every experience they're having while they're asleep. So they don't, and it's not like they're missing out on rest. They're having deep, deep restorative rest. Shamans even bury themselves in the earth with like a breathing tube that goes up into the air, and they stay there for multiple days in a row in order to become one with the earth. So these are very, accessible things, but the fear that one would go through in order to cross over into that it's no joke. And so that's part of the process, is unbinding from fear. And Toltecs say that the fear that comes in isn't actually yours. It's a program that's running like hypnosis. And we have 2 minds. We have our natural mind, and then we have this foreign installation. And most of humanity is operating under the foreign installation. So to free ourselves from the hypnosis is to go back to the natural mind and to be aware of the foreign installation. It's like a radio channel that you can turn off. And our meditative state is critical to master if we don't want that interference running. And so it's just a dance with that type of interaction and becoming aware of how, becoming aware of your death, that we behave according to Toltecs as if we're immortal. We need to behave as if this could be the last moment, so that we're really appreciating every experience and not essentially taking anything for granted.
Do you feel like your purpose and the Toltec purpose for humanity is freedom?
Yes.
Freedom of humanity, because I mean, people listening to this, that they're probably not going to act on this to take this type of multi-decade journey to become like a Toltec master or whatever you would call that, or shaman, I guess.
Yeah.
So how does that heal? How does this purpose that you're on? Well, first of all, let me just ask, do you know why you were born? Like what your purpose is in this lifetime? I'm imagining the answer is an emphatic yes. And secondly, how do you think that broadens out to your healing for the rest of humanity?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I definitely knew at a young age that I was going to have a really powerful lifetime. I remember looking in the mirror and talking to myself and sort of, preparing myself for the intensity that I was about to enter into. And
I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Just very different field, but same thing.
Yeah. And, I don't think this work that I'm doing is designed for everyone. And I think but certain people, when they discover me and the movements that I teach and the recapitulation, which is memory, soul retrieval work, people that it's meant for, they're really drawn to it. And it changes their life instantly when they hear about it. And especially when they come train with me online or in person.
I'm hoping to make your December event we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really strong. It's really fun. Very heart opening for a lot of us. And it's just really a beautiful way to connect. So, but everyone here has a unique capacity to discover their relationship with source, and that guidance that will come in because of it is going to give them that, whether it's becoming a death doula or being guided to help people on the streets, or, everyone has sort of a calling. But I think most people are focused on manifestation rather than listening. And if we can get silent, we can receive guidance. And I've received a lot of guidance to do what I'm doing. And I'm just trying to, and that's why I invite people to this training, is even if you're not going to get in deep like I am, having a weekend with me very likely will unveil some things about your purpose and meaning, and it'll help you take things to the next level. And because we're not doing psychedelics, we're just doing these movements, it's a little bit more integrated. It's easier to take home with you because you can take the movements back to your house and do them as often as you want. You can recapitulate your memories, which becomes a really profound level of focus. So my elder would say, rather than meditate, focus. So our ability to reclaim our attention is critical. And that doesn't mean that we all have to become Toltec dreamers. The Toltecs say that sorcery is a dead-end street, and so is ignorance. But you have to be able to handle the ignorant realm and not be offended. You also have to learn how to navigate and understand magic, sorcery, power, so that you're not like a child that's hanging out with adults. You've got to be able to handle the dark and the light. And that doesn't mean you get into the dark stuff.
Right.
But you got to come to terms with it so that you're not susceptible and ignorant to how dangerous some of these beings that walk this realm are, and the other interdimensional ones as well. So being able to confront the terror of the world and be unflinching eventually, so that you're not letting that overwhelm you. And that takes preparation, energetic preparation.
Yeah.
And it's what we call shadow work, is getting to know any wounded parts of yourself that might be offended by those black magicians, or because if you are offended, then you're easily manipulated. You could be manipulated or scared. And so we want to become powerful enough to not get trapped in the world of sorcery or ignorance. And the middle path is what we call freedom.
Yeah.
And so there's a way to unbind from those hijacks and choose the afterlife. So shamans of my lineage are not seeking power in this life. They're saving their energy to have an alternative type of dying so that they can enter into the afterlife consciously without recycling. And that is what they refer to as, they say that you can live as long as the earth, but in a different layer of the onion. And so I'm choosing to not recycle this round and have another lifetime. I'm going to help from the other side, so to speak.
Okay, that's interesting. There's a book I read called Journey of Souls. I don't know if you read that by Michael Newton. And one of the things, through regression therapy, it basically is a meta study on over 40 subjects and what is the commonality between them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it decodes is that there's these multiple layers of heaven, source, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I call it heaven or source. But I also find when I'm in a journey state that I sometimes call it the river of consciousness. Sometimes I call it the astral plane. There's a lot of different things I refer to it as. It's all the same thing. But that once you get to a certain soul level, and it's actually an aura that that you're able to see around the soul in heaven, and I think it's like a purple aura. But once you get to that level, you stop incarnating and you're just there as a guide helping others. And the ultimate level is level 7, where you just completely merge in with source and God. And Michael Newton, who wrote the book, he said, obviously he can't interview those people because they're not here anymore. And he has, I think in the book, he was only able to interview someone at level 5 was the highest level, because one of the things he posited is that 75% of all humanity is at a level 1 soul, which is the most basic level.
Sure.
Meaning that they don't have this kind of embodiment, this communion with their soul, and haven't yet figured out how to do that, and haven't figured out how to alleviate their suffering so that their soul kind of advances from lifetime to lifetime.
Yeah.
And so they're staying in a kind of a programmatic state, like, someone was wronged as a kid, and then their whole narrative for the rest of their life is how they're wronged, and then that gives them their quote unquote power, but really it's just an amplification of constant suffering. And so it sounds like you're at that level where after this lifetime you're going to stop incarnating, which is kind of cool to have you on this, because there's not many people I've met that are at that state of awareness.
Yeah, it's Toltecs referred to it as the somersault of thought into the inconceivable. So you travel into many, basically anything you desire to do, you do.
Right.
But you have to transcend the traps of like the sex, money, power part of it, because otherwise you would misuse that power. So it's very much freedom-based. But lucid dreaming is just a taste. If you can become lucid in your dreams, you get to experience similar to like an ayahuasca journey or something, but you're doing it all the time, even while you're awake. So there's what we call dreaming awake. And so like I'll be running in the mountains at night in the dark, and all of a sudden I'm being held and I'm floating. Nobody can witness that. It's very personal, right? I wouldn't be able to do it in front of somebody because it's not meant to be shown. I could do it alongside.
What do you mean by floating?
It's called the gate of power. Like all of a sudden the darkness is holding you. You can't see anything in front of you. So it has to be the appropriate conditions. But your dreaming body all of a sudden kicks in, and you no longer have a physical form. But you're still technically running down the mountain or in the desert, but you don't feel your feet touching. It's just the most incredible feeling of like flying. And then shamans can bilocate. From that state of perception, you can all of a sudden cover great distances. Carlos Castaneda went to sleep in his bed in Los Angeles and woke up in a bathtub in Tucson, Arizona, because his teacher was inviting him in a dream state to wake up here, wake up here. And water is a conduit for travel. So the bathtub was set up for him. and he had these powerful teachers that were pulling his dreaming body. Dreaming body went to the bathtub, and then his physical body followed. And then he had to take a plane home back to Los Angeles.
Wow.
So we've just barely tapped our potential. And I don't think that humanity's meant to all of a sudden wake up to these things. I think it happens in stages. And so this force that is higher on the food chain is feeding off the 75%. But for those of us that aren't being fed off anymore, we get to graduate. And then eventually those other souls will start to graduate as well. And so I don't buy into this sudden utopian concept. I think the tyrants of this world are necessary as teachers. I think that the terror that occurs is part of becoming conscious, and that everything is already perfect. It's like a perfect training ground for our soul. And that doesn't mean that we don't run the risk of perishing, because the ignorance of this realm is so detrimental to consciousness that we do need to really wake up enough people soon enough to make sure that we don't lose the opportunity to work from this place. And so there's just a lot of potential for each individual, and the afterlife is a magical experience to tap into. And so there's two different ways of dying, and we want to become aware that we can recapitulate all of our memories, so that when we do cross over, rather than those memories flash before our eyes and all that awareness goes out of our system and we forget and come back, we get to keep all that experience and take it with us into the afterlife.
All right.
So all of these experiences I'm having, I'm going to remember forever. And when I cross into the afterlife, I'll remember all my other lifetimes. Like you were talking about, it becomes consolidated and it's all returns to you. I'll even be able to gain access to every dream I've ever had, because everything's recorded, like the Akashic records. It's just accessible.
Well, that's in Journey of Souls, is that actually when we cross, that you have access to all the prior lessons, and then you choose to incarnate again to expand on and learn new lessons. So one of the things that I want to come back to is, I don't want to dance around something you're saying, because I know that at this point in the podcast, people are probably, starting to question what's going on here. So you keep talking about these forces that feed off of us. And one of the things that I'm having trouble grappling with that part of the conversation is, I've had these experiences with God, with the prime creator. And that is a force completely rooted in love, complete love and care for us. And I have seen that, the prime creator is the prime creator of all life throughout the universe. I definitely believe that we're not the only intelligent life in the universe. And there's many other souls out there. I mean, as far as we know, the universe is infinite, and therefore God is infinite. And one of the things Chris Bosch found in LSD in the Mind of the Universe is he was trying to really nail it down, get to, okay, I now completely understand reality. And when he was on the Buddha at the Gas Pump podcast with Rick Archer, which I love that podcast, I think it's got 800 episodes now. It's been going since 2009. I mean, the well of content here is so deep. If you take this, spiritual path, which I would encourage everybody to do. But he said that when he got to this point where he felt like, okay, I've got it figured out, God then showed him this infinite, this infinite line, basically showing him there is no end. There's no end to this knowledge. You could do this for the rest of your life and you'll never know, and have everything figured out. And so why would there be these beings that feed off of us? And how, the thing that I'm really confused about is, how would they have not already conquered their own fear and allowed love to transform them? And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, that aliens are here right now on Earth. then that means either they're multidimensional or they've conquered faster and light speed travel in this dimension, which I think actually we're going to be able to do. We don't really understand the laws of physics. There's never been a reconciliation between quantum physics and classical physics, and I explored that in the Lattice. But if they've conquered faster and light speed travel, and that's how they've got into Earth, that means they have faster and light speed weapons. And a faster and light speed weapon would obliterate the Earth in a nanosecond. We'd had zero defense. It would just, boom, it's over. It would be worse than that scene in Star Wars where the Death Star, shoots a planet and everybody on that planet dies, because in that case, it wasn't faster and light speed. Like, people could see it was coming. Faster and light speed, it's just over immediately. So if they're that much more superior than us, and if they ultimately want to subjugate us, what's the point? Like, and how does the Prime Creator sanction that, or if maybe the Prime Creator has no opinion on that, although the Prime Creator's deeply rooted in love for us?
Yeah, it's kind of like tough love. So it's a means to prepare us for the capacity to become creators ourselves. And so these forces that are higher on the food chain, they're just in place to ensure that we gain the proper capacity to make full use of this incredible realm and its infinite capacity. And according to Toltecs, there's places you could go within this realm that would be destructive if you weren't ready. And so it's kind of like if you were to go out on the football field without any pads on and a helmet and you didn't know how to play the game, you would get really hurt really quick. So we need to gain the tools to be able to go to the abyss without getting destroyed. And there's a lot of beings that are involved in spiritual warfare. And it's because of, just like in this world, there's pedophiles and there's all kinds of beings that are harming the innocent.
Yes.
That's not just here. That's in these other layers and these other dimensions. There's other dimensions within this reality, and then there's other entire realities that we can go to, and they have their own dimensions. And so our ability to explore other worlds, because this is a multi-world realm, but these beings that are interfering with us are not using any sort of physicality. They don't have any weapons of physicality. They're not operating from a physical place. Their capacity it's more vampiric and predatorial. They're very attracted to our light. Just like you might be attracted to a woman that's beautiful and the light that she radiates, these beings are attracted to our light because it's beautiful. And they are seeking that warmth, and they are designed by the Creator to be attracted to that light. They have a light within them that's really dull, and they live like millions of years, where we live like maybe 100 to 150 at the most, or some people have transcended that by preserving their energy but we're being interfered with for a reason, and it's not a negative,
right?
Even though it sounds super negative, it's actually just a function of our soul contract to become conscious and aware. And it's sort of like a pattern that's in place that is from the Creator itself as a means to make sure that we get the proper. It's kind of like a parent that is willing to prepare their child rather than just throw your kid out to the wolves.
Right.
You let them know about the dangers of this world.
Yeah.
And so we're being taught a very valuable lesson, even though it feels negative.
Wow. That's kind of blowing my mind on many levels. But it makes total sense. I mean, one of the books that I've read a couple of times now is called 11 Days in May. It's by this guy, J.D. Messenger. And he's able to have a communion for 11 days in this cabin in May, outside of Austin, actually. He and I have become good friends, and he's going to be on this podcast soon. He's actually the publisher for my upcoming book, which is called Love Conquers Fear, with the subtitle Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All. And one of the things that he asked this being in the beyond, and I don't want to spoil that part of the book, because you find out at the end who it is why do atheists exist?
Yeah.
And they exist for the quest for people to find God.
Yeah.
Like without atheists,
Yeah.
there's not the quest. And what you're saying makes so much sense to me that, God, even though is a force that loves us completely and totally, we do learn through tough love as well.
Right.
I mean, life is both suffering and love, and some of the best lessons we learn in life is through suffering.
Yeah, hardship and ego death are necessary. And so Toltecs reach a point where they actually seek out a tyrant to go work for and be in the presence of, so that they can develop the attributes of controlled folly, which is patience, cunning, sweetness, and ruthlessness. So if you can find a full-fledged tyrant, a person who has never been defeated, whose ego is, massive, and be under them without being triggered by that ego, then you develop this real calmness and capacity to handle adversity on a level that would make you indestructible. But if you're just trying to escape and purchase your way out of the tyranny of this realm, then you're running away. So to cultivate this awareness, Toltecs test themselves in the world, in the matrix, to see if there's a possibility of being in the most harsh conditions without being offended, because our ego needs to be tested to see how resilient we are.
Yeah. Have you ever read the book The Alchemist?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty classic one.
Yeah.
I read that recently, was in March, and there was, when you have an experience with a book and you read a line like 50 times?
Yeah.
Have you ever had that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, the line for me that I literally read 50 times, I was like, why is my soul like going over this again and again and again, is it's always darkest before the dawn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you feel that? I mean, I feel like there's so much good happening in the world at the same time where there's really some very dark forces, for lack of a better way to call it. And do you feel like a big part of the darkness right now is so we can be born into the light? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the forces rise to meet each other. So, there's a potential for the transhuman future to hijack natural evolution. And if that were to happen, that would be destructive. We have to keep our spirit intact and not become robots. And so we need to learn how to work with technology, not fear it. But we also need to not let it, not let AI be hijacked by, malevolent beings or individuals that want to control humanity, which some people are actually trying to do.
Yeah.
So we're really in a dangerous situation.
Right.
But it's usually when our backs are against the wall where we discover our capacity.
Yeah.
And so that's the time we're heading into, unfortunately, is we're going to have to go through some real collective ego death as a means to discover that we're much stronger than we realized, and that we can kind of pull some tricks out of our hat, so to speak, and realize, like, the Toltecs didn't know how powerful they were until the conquistadors came. They looked under every stone to make sure they could obliterate the spirituality of the Toltec lineage. So that's when the Toltecs learned how to bilocate. That's when they learned how to hide in plain sight. That's where they learned how to pretend that they were submissive when really they were just sneaking into the slave camp in order to free everybody. So we're going to have to become as daring as Geronimo and some of those tales that we've learned about from some of those more magical native people, or, the transcended masters and stuff. We're not separate from that. It's just that we're going to be put in situations that are going to be what we call trials of, desperate nature. And it's through transcending the desperateness and becoming calm in the face of adversity that the greatest clarities will come to our minds, into our hearts, and we'll be able to integrate those discoveries.
I mean, one of the things for people listening to this or watching this is, and it makes me uncomfortable to talk about this, but I'll talk about it because it's just kind of, it's hard to even reckon with. So You know, one of the issues we have right now in the world, like let's pretend that you and I just came here.
Yeah.
And we're trying to assess where the threats to humanity are. One of the things that you and I would pretty quickly zero in on is nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
There are 13,000 in the world today. And then we would ask ourselves, what percentage of today's nuclear weapons out of the 13,000 would it take to destroy all the significant sized cities in the world and send the world into a nuclear winter for over a decade, killing billions of humans, untold billions of animals? What do you think the percentage is?
I'm guessing it's super low, like 5%.
It's 2%.
Yeah, yeah.
We have 50 times today. And then we would ask ourselves, is humanity still making these weapons? You know what the answer to that is?
Yes.
And China's never made more. The US is making a lot right now. And then we would ask ourselves, well, what do humans call this? Do you know what it's called? There's an acronym for it. It's a Department of Defense term. The acronym is MAD. It stands for mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
It's a hijack of our amygdala. And that's today. We have that today. And so we do have fear that we have to transcend. Like it's really urgent that we transcend this and allow love to conquer fear, because already, I mean, you know, AI, quantum computing, robotics, I think can bring enormous amount of light to the world. I agree that it's always how we use the technology. You know, in 11 Days in May, J.D. Messenger asked this question about nuclear weapons because it was something that he used to work on a nuclear sub, you know, and he, you know, when he was in the military, and it really bothered him. It shook him to his core that there are these nuclear weapons, and he knew how destructive they are. And he knew these types of statistics that I'm giving you. And, you know, we have to ultimately transcend this. It's always how we use technology. And in that book, he talked about nuclear weapons. You know, the answer he got back from the being he was communicating with are neither good nor bad. It's how they're used. And in that case, they were used to stop World War II, which was a good thing. But it's all about intent.
Yeah.
You know, we continue to build these things, and they're real weapons. It's not like a fake weapon that we're using to like kind of fake each other out to hijack the amygdala. They're real weapons that could actually be detonated. And, you know, now we have this absolutely exponential curve coming online. And what I've been shown is that this is God's final exam for humanity. It's in the lattice. And it's God's way of forcing us to transcend and to really reconcile with, we have to collectively wake up. Love has to conquer fear for us to hit that transcendence. I think what you've studied with the Toltec practice is the same thing, but it's just coming at it from different angles.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have this very positive perspective that it's a test, but also when that person goes to start that process, that something would happen and the timeline would shift and it wouldn't actually play out.
Okay.
Like the creator is incredibly capable, that we're not capable of self-destruction.
Right. That's really interesting.
But we need to believe that we are in order to become awake and realize how valuable life is. And so, you know, I watched a man cutting a tree, a really beautiful, huge tree, and he started shaking because the tree was fighting back. He ended up getting through it and the tree died and all that, but there is great pressure on humanity through the creator force to make sure that certain ego deaths happen right at the right moment. And so I have this incredible trust that forces always rise to meet each other. And so I don't believe the earth is capable of being destroyed. I think we're capable of destroying ourselves.
All right.
But if it was to the detriment of this living being that gives life, which is the earth, because we say that the mud of this earth is what makes the clay of our bodies, that we're directly connected. We come from the stars, but we became physical through her. And so I just, even though I totally believe you that the potential for the danger is significant, I believe that we're being guided through a hidden hand, and that we're ultimately, everything's going to be incredible.
Yeah. Well, I am 95% certain that we make it.
Yeah.
So, there are people like Eliezer Yudkowsky, who just came out with a book. I think the title is We're All Going to Die, but he's like 95% certain that we're not going to make it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to invite him on the podcast because I want people on that also disagree. I've had 2 people on the podcast now with Byron Reese and Vishal who are 100% certain that we're going to make it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're 100% certain that we're going to make it.
I am 100%.
Because of these balancing forces.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't destroy creation. It's more powerful than we are. And so shamans say grandfather, grandmother, creation, great mystery. And it's all one. And we're all one.
All right.
Even though there's these terrible beings that are trying to destroy the world, we're actually still intimately in oneness with them. And that's what's really hard to come to terms with, is how lost these souls, our brothers and sisters, have become. But ultimately, that's part of the process, is to come face to face with our potential to destroy ourselves without actually being able to, because the Creator is so capable of overseeing everyone at all times.
All right. Wow. It syncs so well with so much I've read. It's just kind of blowing my mind. So do you think that, and I've heard you talk about this on other podcasts, you call them the flyers.
Yeah.
Do you think the point is that we need to defeat them in some type of spiritual, or that we need to allow love to conquer our own fears, radiate a lot more luminosity ourselves, and therefore we transcend their power over us completely?
Yeah, so the flyers are the ones that run the foreign installation, which is that second mind that's not natural. And for us to come out of that mind and find our natural mind, then the flyers are no longer able to be higher on the food chain. They would be forced to then evolve and discover love. But they are in fear of being caught. They're like a kid with their hand in the cookie jar, afraid mom's going to come around the corner any second. And so they don't want to be exposed. And so if you ever experience a tremendous amount of fear that doesn't feel like lots of anxiety or something that overwhelms you, once you realize it's not yours, it's just a program, an installation, then you can move beyond it. But it's kind of that, things get really dark before the light is revealed. So I've had some very difficult moments where I thought everything, was going to be just like I was going to die. But it was an ego death, right? And so there's just, this is not a negative thing that this predator energy is here, but it does have its own course of discovery process, and we need to basically expose it as a parasitic entity and stop giving it our energy in order for it to become capable of moving into its next stage, where it moves, where it discovers its potential to be a loving creature.
It's so cool. Like, one of the things I explore in the Lattice is that all of the advanced beings that have reached our level of intelligence, and we still need to reach into higher levels of intelligence ourselves. They get to a point where love does conquer fear, and it happens over and over and over again in the universe. And the last short story in the novella is called God's Infinite Game. That just continues throughout.
Infinitely.
All the time.
Infinitely. That's what we call infinity, or the third attention. There's the first and second and third attention. First attention is like the physical world, and the second attention is the dreaming travel, the ability to explore other worlds. And eventually those two merge, and we in the afterlife we get a glimpse of the third attention. And then we recycle and come back, unless we lived a particular lifestyle where we can stay in the third attention. And so much is accessible from the third attention. It's a place in which you get to still experience what it's like to be physical,
Right.
but without any limitation whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's just a playground of intensity, but you wouldn't be able to hang out there had you not become energetically powerful. It's not just granted. We have to earn it.
Yeah.
And that's what this realm is for, is to earn access to the infinite.
Yeah. 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 I mean, one of the recommendations I would have is that people read the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Because once you get to the point where you can capture a negative thought or program, let it go, it's incredibly freeing. And I have had this experience with I don't know what to actually call it, but with dark energy, where I'm able now, through the level of reading and practice I've done, to capture it and let it go and actually protect myself from it. And it allows me to radiate a lot more love in this world. And of course, it starts with, conquering your own fears and loving yourself and having that communion with your soul to know what your purpose is, and know that, a lot of people ask me, like, how do I have so much energy? And honestly, it's because I'm living my purpose.
Beautiful.
Like, when you know that, and, I'm sure you feel the same way. Like, it's not energy draining when you're in alignment with your purpose. And, Viktor Frankl, in the book Man's Search for Meaning, he survived 4 concentration camps during World War II. And he was so in alignment with his purpose that he then created an entire field of psychology called logotherapy afterwards, and wrote 15 plus books. And he had lost really everything, all material items, people that he loved, family members, but he knew that he was born for that purpose.
Wow.
And it's not really a spiritual book, but it is a spiritual book, right? He doesn't talk about it in terms of God or heaven or anything like that, but it's a very accessible book. And so I can understand what you're saying. I haven't had this experience with calling whatever that is the flyers, but I can tell you that the being able to capture and let go of any dark energy forces and just boom, just let it go and protect yourself from it. And I actually have sometimes these conversations where I can feel it trying to come in, and I just stop it and just reject it and put it out.
It's there's a way to insulate yourself so that you're not as susceptible as the collective humanity is. And so we call it living an impeccable life. You move beyond discipline, and you discover a way of being so in such a harmonious state of being that when those forces show up, you're able to detect it, and therefore recognize that it's not your thought, it's something else, and you can discard it. And it can be really uncomfortable and intense at times as you become stronger. It's like there's a program here that is adjustable. So as you get stronger, the program has to step up its game to try to control you. And so often a really powerful person will be tempted to become like a cult leader or something, because that's the way the program is run now. Since you are no longer a victim, it has to try to convince you to be victorious over others. Neutrality is critical, that we remain humble, and that even though we step into leadership and gain social power or even energetic power, that we don't misuse it. And there's forces that will try to get you to do that. So this place is constantly testing us in the most profound ways.
Yeah. It's an interesting aspect of Earth School, which we are constantly being tested. And really the purpose, as I understand it, of lifetime to lifetime, is to continue to grow and expand our ability to manifest love, manifest service to each other, help each other grow, and ultimately eventually transcend this reality altogether.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And some of the books I love reading the most are like Dr. David Dawkins and, Anthony DeMello, like some of these authors who you could tell they were on a spiritual level where they're about to stop incarnating.
Yeah, DeMello really blew my mind. I'm really thankful for him. And
Awareness, did you read Awareness?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite
God.
books. Yeah.
So I had Taro on, who is the founder of Four Sigmatic mushrooms,
Cool.
which I put in my smoothies every day. And it's not a Four Sigmatic ad. I don't get any money from Taro. I just give him money for his products.
Cool.
But he's become very successful, and he went on his own soul quest back when he was around 18, I think, and read over 130 books by the time he was 20. And I asked him what was his favorite. It was Awareness by Anthony DeMello.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful one on Audible, because he's like the George Carlin of spiritual teachers, right? He's laughing out loud and he's making you laugh. Humor is such a beautiful true serum.
It is. Yeah. The most advanced spiritual people I know are hilarious.
Yeah.
They're very much enjoying their life. And so Toltecs are very irreverent. They make fun of themselves. They very much act like children, but they're also reverent, right? They're very serious people because they're focused on making every moment count. And they believe you can slow time down and really have a profound relationship with the nonlinear, even in a linear construct. So that's where the not doings come in, moving beyond the meditation into that, what we call the active side of infinity. But it takes being able to be really light, and lightness comes with great humor. And so I hang out with a lot of really funny people in my life as a means, not even spiritually advanced ones. Some of them are just have incredible capacity to crack me up. So I like to hang out with them, even though we're not on the same path. So it's just important to have a diversity of friendships and be open to that. You can learn so much from people. Like, part of my training is we'd go hang out with the old Indians living under bridges, drinking wine in Missoula back in the day. And they were like prophets. The things that would come out of their mouth, even though they were living this schizophrenic alternative lifestyle, that old Paul Simon saying that the prophets are written on the subway walls or whatever. There's meaning, there's information and signs and omens everywhere. And so our ability to not take ourselves too seriously is pretty critical.
Yeah, it's something that is it's a misunderstanding about, well, I would say it's a judgment around highly advanced spiritual people, that people assume they're on some mountaintop,
right,
just meditating. And they do a lot of meditation, or they have this regular communion with their soul, but they're actually like really funny and joyous people.
Yeah.
I remember when I studied with Swamiji Partha, I was studying Vedanta in India. And the thing that blew my mind at the end of it is they put on a performance with all the people at the academy.
Yeah.
And it was one of the funniest performances I've ever seen. Like, Broadway play.
Cool.
I mean, it wasn't like that scale, right? But none of that mattered. It was like who was performing and how funny it was. And I was like, the people here that have really studied Vedanta had gotten to a level of spiritual enlightenment where they're just in play. They're in flow.
Yeah.
That's such a incredibly beautiful thing to see. And we all have that capacity.
Yeah. The reclaiming of our youth, right? That's the Toltec's premise, is that we can get that really joyful expression back. And so we practice the recapitulation. And the more you recapitulate your memories, which is a technique of breathing in the energy you left in the past and exhaling anything that you took on from others. As you do that, your memories get stronger. You start having access to more and more memories. And pretty soon you get back to, like, it's really hard to get here, but you can start remembering stuff from 0 to 3 and even remember being in the womb. And then eventually remember choosing to come here, and things of this nature, or the moment of your conception. So life does begin at conception, according to the Toltecs, because they went back to it. That it's like the Big Bang of becoming your own spark of light and being brought in here through that very powerful act. And so Toltecs actually try to find out how they were conceived.
All right.
As a means, like, was it loving? Was it boring? Was it, like, I had a friend that was conceived on LSD. Both his parents were on LSD when they were conceived. So he came in with all this extra energy, but it made his life really difficult because he couldn't stay focused on simple things. He was just too excited, and he became, like, getting in and out of jail and getting in trouble a lot. But so everyone's blueprint determines so much about how their activities go. So we just want to learn to make fun of our story, get to know all the youthful energy that we can, and remember the pure affection we felt when we were just running around as little kids, and be able to merge that with becoming a healthy adult. Because most people aren't actually adults. They're kids pretending to be adults that didn't really grow up. And that's why so much trauma, and kids are raised in an unconscious environments where they don't realize, they think their parents know what's going on. And it's only until they become adults usually they realize mom and dad didn't really have a clue, and so that's this sort of the spiritual journey. But it's not a negative, because everybody needs some sort of trauma as a means to go through the rite of passage of just being here. So
Yeah.
I'm not at odds with my parents for the mistakes that I could say were mistakes, but weren't really mistakes at all. They were just part of the plan that was me, of my soul growth.
Yeah. Suffering is an amazing teacher.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin, one of his famous quotes is, "Pain is instructive."
Yeah.
He might be my favorite entrepreneur of all time.
Don Juan said, wisdom comes painfully and in driblets.
So, one of the things I want to circle back to on nuclear weapons, I just want to kind of honor, and I really, really love what you said about these balancing forces. I think that's a really important message. And what do you think about these moments in time where we've gotten close with destroying ourselves, and these forces have showed up? People they assume they're aliens. I think they actually may be angelic. I mean, I don't know what they are. But they show up and actually show what power they have. Like, they make it where even though these facilities are highly protected, all of a sudden all ability to fire the weapons goes offline. And I'm sure you've read about this, heard about it. It's been highly documented, and it's been declassified. So these are actual facts. This isn't some conspiracy theory. And they don't know what's causing that. But then there's been these sightings of, things that could be coming in from different dimensions, et cetera. What do you think that is? What's the Toltec interpretation of that? Is that aliens, angels? What is it?
Yeah. They say there are many, many different types of beings that share this world with us. They call them inorganic beings, and there's helpful ones, and then there's ones that are the opposite, and that they both serve, or both sides serve a purpose. I don't believe that we're in a physical world. We're experiencing it as a convenience. And so I don't believe that our salvation is in going to other planets. I think it's all tapping into the other layers of this realm, which is like an onion. And so I think we share this actual earth with many, many different beings, which you could refer to as alien, because they're not like us. They have totally different energetic configurations. And I believe we can go out into the stars and visit those consciousnesses, those wandering stars, which we call planets, and the stars are all awarenesses. And I think they have the ability to project themselves. So I think we're being intervened with by the star systems, that they come down and make sure that we don't destroy ourselves. And they're full of love, and they're very much like probably you and I have a star that we are a projection of, and we go back there. And so we're a multifaceted nature. I do think that there are angelics. I think that there are demonics, and I think there's spiritual warfare. And I think we have to become capable of witnessing and being aware of it. And we don't want to get caught in that spiritual battle ourselves. We want to find that neutrality, because you become your enemy when you end up having to fight something. And so Carlos Castaneda said that the battle is in the chest. It has to do with your heart. And if you get lost in trying to defeat something because it's trying to hurt you, then you become what is attacking you, in a sense. And so I feel for all those beings that are caught in those spiritual warfares, but I also think there's higher there's super evolutionary beings in the angelic world that are helping and not caught up in the battle. So there's different variations of these storylines. And yeah, I just think when something is about to, I think things are not linear. And so you can look into the future and see what happens if certain actions are taken. And so beings from the future come in and they make sure certain things don't occur to make sure that there's continuity for humanity.
Mm-hmm. And for those that are listening, I have this profound, deep love for humanity, all of humanity.
Yeah.
But for those listening who have given up on humanity, as I had this dinner actually with Mark Gober.
Yeah.
And we had some of the most famous entrepreneurs, AI scientists, et cetera, at that dinner. And one of them said, well, I've seen what job humanity's done. And I literally felt pain in my heart.
Yeah.
I felt pain in my heart. And I thought, wow, like you've given up on humanity. It hurt. It literally hurt.
Sure.
I felt physical pain. And what would you say to them about like, why do these other beings care about us? Like, why do they want to save us?
Well, I think we are them. They're like a future version of us. So it's not linear. They're coming back to make sure we don't destroy ourselves because it's us saving ourselves.
Wow.
It's like we become the angelics eventually. We become all these more advanced races, but it's our transformation, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
Yeah.
So if we're in a materialistic, linear world and that's all we know, then that is such a painful, hopeless place to be in. So, Carlos Castaneda, one of his assignments was to walk away from all of his money, literally not take a credit card or anything, and go start over in a town without anything to prove that he was capable, that this realm is sentient and that it will guide you out of the most miserable conditions if you're willing to do whatever it takes and that your heart is open. He had to beg for a job and a place to sleep, so he got to live in somebody's basement, which was filthy, and he got to learn to be a cook, a fast food cook or a line cook in a breakfast place. And he was able to get himself out of poverty within like 30 days because he had the energy. So we can prove to ourselves that even in the most difficult situations, we're totally capable. Like I used to hitchhike out of town with nothing. And I would be given a place to stay and a job, and my boss would give me a draw so I could eat. It's, if you're in a heart-based, open-minded perception, the universe will send the most incredible people your direction to make sure that everything's okay.
That's very Celestine prophecy.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've read that.
Oh, many times. Yeah.
And that is the Tao.
Yes.
As well. Yeah. That's the Tao Te Ching. It's the Tao, another word for God, another word for consciousness.
Yeah.
So what you just said blew my mind again, because I grew up reading tons of sci-fi, and part of the reason I've started companies outside of that is my soul's purpose is to create that future, be a part of that creative process, like create the future that we want. Rejecting the dystopian, but realizing that darkness of the dystopian sci-fi is to bring in the light.
Yes.
Something like Black Mirror exists on Netflix to show us what happens unchecked, and that allows us to manifest more light. But one of the things that I've said that you just blew my mind on is, if we could take all of our possessions, today, and all the people we cared about, and really it's all the people we care about much more than possessions, and we could go to any other point in the past, we probably wouldn't go there because we are living in the best time.
Yeah.
But I've also said if we could go 100 years out from today, so we're now in the year, let's just say 100 years out. So we're in 2125. I don't think we'd recognize humanity.
Yeah.
I think it would be so transcendent that they would appear as gods to us.
Sure.
Like they would be able to open their palm and manifest an object, and we wouldn't understand what was happening at the nano level and how they were able to do that, and how the technology was so ethereal at that point. And 1,000 years from now, do you think a lot about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the movie Cloud Atlas, or even the book. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just showing, it's just the same story over and over, but in totally different settings. And those settings are so extremely different. So in the future version, they have an AI goddess named Somni, and they think that she is God because there was a recording left from the past where she was telling humanity about a secret. And that's the only thing they had, a relic of the past. So they assumed it was the creator. And then they end up finding out, that it wasn't, and that just destroys their whole religion. But yeah, I think we're gonna be witnessing marvels and also really scary aspects about technology too, and our ability to really just appreciate this moment. Because when you die, all moments are equal. It's just all one moment.
Right.
And so this very moment we're having might be the last moment I remember when I cross or something. And so you just want to be really open to the idea that there really isn't a past or a future. And yet we can traverse. So shamans do dream what they call them dark dreamers, and they dream of the future. And there's some pretty horrific things to look at. And there's even different timelines that we could choose. But that doesn't mean it's all destructive. It's just that we have to go through different stages of intensity. And I believe that we're in the most magical moment right now. But I also believe we've been lied to about how the past was, and that there's truths that have been hidden on purpose by beings that are trying to make sure that humanity goes in a particular direction. So I think the past was really powerful. And some dreamers go back into those times when before the flyers got here, and we were at the peak of our power, and we were crossing into other layers of the onion, traversing into other worlds with ease. And so I'm open to, as a dreamer, using this as the base dream and getting glimpses of the future, returning to these pasts, even though I don't think of it that way. It's sort of just other scales of intensity. And but I have no complaints about the way things are. I think that there's just so much potential for us during this difficult transition to become aware of our light and our power, that I wouldn't ever want to escape this experience. I'm excited and thankful and just so appreciative to be here.
Well, that's really beautiful. And I want to double click on something you said there, because I very much agree. I think that there was an aspect of humanity that was much more human than we are today, in terms of understanding the power of our bodies and understanding the power of our minds. And there was a demonization of those people as primitive or savage, and that we lost a lot of wisdom, and we're rediscovering that wisdom. And I actually think that AI and quantum computing and robotics is actually going to give us more intimacy with what makes us most human. This chase for inventing sentience or consciousness in machines, I think, is going to make us grapple with the superpowers we already have.
Yeah, Toltecs say that knowledge is not information, knowledge is power. And power is perceptual, not financial, or whoever has the most advanced technology wins. It doesn't work that way. Again, forces rise to meet each other, and what actually matters is your ability to make use of your perception to become lucid. And if you become lucid, then your capacity to become free and liberated is so much more than somebody that's clinging to a technological tool that you can't take with you into the afterlife. I'm preparing for the afterlife, not concerned about, making sure I get my hands on the thing that's going to protect me from the people that have discovered this, that, and the other. I trust deeply in my personal power to be insulated, because I'm I'm following my signs, omens, and feelings, and I'm being guided. And therefore I know that I'm walking very closely with God. I'm not separate. And so when you feel that way, you don't have to really live in fear anymore. And there's just so much more there's an expansiveness to that. So knowledge being power rather than information ends up being a really liberating discovery.
So that's beautiful. It really is just that's the only thing I can say about that is it's really beautiful. And I want to dive into, because I hadn't heard of the Toltecs before Mark Gober. Can you give just a brief history of like, how did the Toltecs manifest? How did this, what's the history of the Toltec tradition? Who started it? How did it evolve?
Well, so the Carlos Castaneda books explain that there's two different types of Toltecs. There's the Toltecs as far as the bloodline, and then there's what they call the Toltecs, which is not necessarily a bloodline. It's a type of knowledge. So just because you were born of a Mexican-American heritage that is associated with Mayan or Toltec doesn't mean that you have this capacity to do dreaming, to use your power, to discover different aspects of your perception. Toltec is a name given to certain people that achieve these states of consciousness. So I can refer to myself as a Toltec, even though I'm not a Mexican-American, because I'm a practicing Toltec dreamer, where there's another version of what they call Toltec, which is based on history. I believe that the historical accounts have been changed and are not accurate. And I actually haven't bothered to study the background to the point that I could explain it as a historian. I would just say that in Mexico, there's an incredible amount of power. There's a lot of brujos and brujas that are misusing their power, that there's a lot of witchcraft and sorcery that goes unchecked. And it's a very dangerous world to move into learning about that side of things. But the Mayans were very advanced. Toltecs were feared. The Olmecs even feared them. It was a very advanced race of beings that were capable of manipulating perception over humanity. So they took slaves. There's a dark history to sorcery. The Mayans were the ones that were able to transcend this place. And even though people disagree with this historically, I believe through oral tradition, we know that the Mayans learned how to dream and became so proficient as dreamers that they were able to gather in a large group and practice over time, dreaming into another layer of the onion, and eventually walk out of this world in mass. And they were able to escape, I think, a cataclysm or a catastrophe, where others maybe survived it. And I think that might be part of our journey, is that we might have to, with the times ahead, learn to do things of that nature. And I think we can look to the Mayans and the Toltecs as beings that learned something that's critical to our survival, because we might need to occupy a different layer of the onion during a time where things might get really out of balance here. And that's that kind of back against the wall moment where we really discover that there's so much more to what's possible and what we are. So when you're in Mexico doing this work and doing the movements that I teach and practicing the dreaming arts, you feel the ancient power of these beings. And the reason these movements that I teach are so helpful is because they were discovered in states of heightened awareness by the shamans of ancient Mexico during the peak of their power, during the peak of their joy. And so they make you feel really alive and activated, and it helps you with great moments of clarity. So I'm more in touch with the energetic lineage rather than knowing the historical information. So Carlos was taken to the Museum of Anthropology by Don Juan in Mexico City. And he was given a completely different history based on all the statues than what the tour guide would tell you. They have all these things they say about, oh, this statue means this and it means this. And then, so Carlos did both the tour guide version and then he had Don Juan's version, and they couldn't have been more different. So we are under such hypnosis around what we think the nature of reality is that we've attributed teachings to these ancient relics that are totally ass backwards. And it's our ability to extract ourselves from that hypnosis and really feel into the energetic imprint of what those statues represent. I'll say there's these 3 statues at the Museum of Anthropology. One is covered in tattoos, the other one's got like half of its body in tattoos, and the third one has very few. And it is assumed that the one with all the tattoos is old because it had a lifetime of tattoos, and that's what that represents. And then and it looks older. And then the one with half the tattoos looks a little younger, and then the one with very few tattoos looks even younger. But Don Juan explained to Carlos, it's not that one's older, it's that the one that doesn't have the tattoos recapitulated his life, and so he's no longer marked by his experiences. So there's a way to become like a child again when you're no longer carrying the baggage of your past. If someone were to smoke DMT and look in the mirror, they would see symbols all over their energy field. Like my buddy that's really into like football and cannabis, there's like pot leaves and like Green Bay Packers symbol, because that's like his life. So we're marked by what we're into. You can erase those markings. So a lot of people that use DMT do so to see their markings and then find ways to release those markings. We don't want to be filled with symbols. We want to be just pure, bright, luminous beings that don't have any markings at all. And that's what those statues represent in the Museum of Anthropology. They left these pieces of information for us that are mysterious and have secrets to unveil to us. And you actually will receive that if you're in a heightened state of awareness. Those statues are alive and they communicate these teachings because they were built by sorcerers and dreamers that were very gifted at leaving impressions in what we call inanimate objects. But in the shamanic world, stones, trees, plants all communicate and have consciousness. And our ability to communicate with a tree, like the redwoods, I mean, these are magical conscious beings that can help you in the most profound ways. If you spend times being saturated in the redwoods, it will change your life. And I've done that most of my life, has been in nature, having communion with nature. And it sounds woo, but it's not. It's just really profound to be, in Japan, they call it forest bathing. And our ability to heal has a lot to do with connecting to the earth.
Yeah. I always feel better in nature. The favorite trips that I have with Deborah actually are hiking trips. And as we're recording this, she's right now in the Dolomites in Italy.
Oh, beautiful.
On a hiking trip with one of her best friends.
Oh, amazing.
So that I've never done DMT.
Yeah.
And I don't plan to do DMT, but one of the films that one of my friends sent me that's coming out, it's about DMT. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's one where he set up these 2 lasers and people can inhale DMT and see in this cross point in the lasers that everything is code.
Yeah.
And it's repeatable. And there's a documentary coming out about it. And he's trying to make the case we live in a simulation as a result. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do think that we are in a type of simulation, and that doesn't mean that the world isn't natural. It's just that we're so much more advanced than we realize, and we're playing something out right now that we need to not be isolated to. So the events of throughout time are so precise in the nature of how they happen. I've learned a lot from the Archaics channel, Jason Bashir's. He has studied this stuff extensively and has basically proven without a doubt that we're dealing with a simulation when it comes to events that are put in our face through news. Like we're inside of a story that's designed to entrap us. And so I highly recommend people not pay attention to the events that are being pushed on us, because they're all designed to capture our attention so that we don't learn how to come out of the simulated environment. So I believe we're in a holographic projected reality. It's not physical. It's a dream. And if you eat enough mushrooms, you'll discover that. But it's also the most scary experience to have, because the physical world is what makes us feel safe. But we are luminous creatures, and we've been tricked and trapped by forces that have outmaneuvered us. But it's not negative. It's just Like I said before, it's just that there's energies that are higher on the food chain that have figured out how to keep us from discovering what we are. Because if we do discover what we are, then we're going to be able to free ourselves from the bondage that these beings have had the luxury of keeping us in. And the creator designed it that way as a means to test everyone.
Mm-hmm. And to get us to figure out the way to wake up.
Yes, exactly.
And the waking up is to become more loving, luminous beings. Basically, that is the whole point of the Earth School, is to constantly be climbing into heightened states of love, service. And the neat thing about the synchronicity in the roots of all religions is that they all agree on this point.
Yep.
They all agree that the whole point is to be able to love ourselves so we can love others, and that we're all connected. As Mark Gober would say, the one mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Being of service, you realize that if you are of service, then the energy of the universe comes back and supports you. So it's almost selfish to be of service because it leads to you having the most ecstatic experiences through that love. So it's like the return on investment increases.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you break out of patterns that are heavy and limiting, that 100th monkey thing kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
And you're becoming you're giving energetic permission for others to do the same. And you become a lighthouse, and you get brighter and brighter. Your eyes get more luminous. You're able to see energy. You're able to see people's intentions. You're able to feel their vibration and their frequency and know who to stay away from and who to hang out with. And you're not able to be lied to because you're not lying to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a perfect environment for that potential to become of service. And when you're of service, you feel great purpose and meaning and connection. And it really is the one mind. It's the oneness. I say aloneness is all oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to spend time alone. We need to spend time alone without distraction. And the most beautiful connection to source occurs in those, experiences with ourself. And so I practice a lot of shamanic dreaming practices where you have to be alone. They're just designed that way. And it can be really uncomfortable at times. But when you are no longer needing validation from people, then you get the validation directly from the earth, from the sun. I practice sun gazing, and I am in communication with the sun. I believe that I go through the sun when I leave here, that we are all like, the sun is like a projector, and we're all part of that, and or extensions of that projector. So I think that even though we're in a situation that's tricky, it's designed that way for a reason.
Do you recommend people analyze their dreams?
So I believe that when you're having a dream and say your aunt and your uncle are yelling at you or something, that it's not actually your aunt and uncle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a figment of your subconscious memory, like we were told. You're actually interacting with interdimensional beings that are pretending to be your aunt and uncle to get a rise out of you. They're actually trying to get you to become conscious that you're in a dream so that you can look at your hands, realize you're in a dream, and then they can teach you things. So even though these beings are predatorial, they also want to take you to the other levels of attention, because that's where, humanity will evolve, and they're seeking in a weird way through the creator force. They're trying to teach us and help us, even though they're messing with us. So I'm not a dream analyzer. I think all that Freud and all that stuff was designed to confuse us. I think they knew the truth about dreams, that they're interdimensional beings interacting with us, and they got us spun out on. Now, I'm not saying there isn't times where your dreams, the events of a dream, don't have a significant teaching and that you could learn to decode what the meaning is. But I think a lot of what those analysts have left us with has tainted us with a story that makes us repeat dream patterns that are hijacking us from using dreams in magical ways. So I avoid the analytical part and focus more on trying to become conscious that you're in a dream, because then you can have control over your dreams. and then you can start to live 24 hours a day. And instead of just having these slight memories of what happened in which you try to make sense of it all, I think there's so much more to it than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that is in my lineage is my grandfather was an incredible mathematician.
Oh, cool.
He taught here at UT Austin, and he would dream in mathematics. So oftentimes come up with the proofs. And my father was an incredible inventor.
Yep.
And would often dream about how to solve a problem in an invention. I was programming since I was 7, and I would often dream in code.
Yeah.
And I would wake up with the answer and then go quickly to the computer. And it was especially those nights where it was really frustrating, where it's like, I know that there's this problem, and I just like ran out of it. I was just exhausted. And then in the dream, I'd figure out the problem. I'd wake up and solve it.
Yeah, there's guidance in the dream. There's other beings telling us things. So like one of my teachers would be given information about certain truths about this world that he had no idea of, and then he'd Google it the next day, and sure as it just was exactly what he was told in the dream. So it's a validation of that we're being given direct information. So a lot of inventors either get it in a moment of clarity while they're in this dream, or in a deeper level of dreaming. So it's super valid.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always looked at that as a connection to the divine as well. As you're saying, sometimes it's connection with other beings.
It opens you to everything, right? So we're very unaware of the power of dreams, where other beings are much more active. And so we're kind of susceptible. But yeah, there's also the most incredible. So just because there's beings that are interfering, there's also the balance of beings that are trying to make sure that we feel the love and support that's all around us.
Yeah.
So it's through dreams.
Yeah, I definitely believe there are beings that have learned how to navigate consciousness and whatever this 96% of the universe that we don't know what it's made of.
Yeah.
And we just call it dark energy and dark matter. That there have to be beings that know what that is and know how to navigate it. And we haven't yet figured that out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's okay.
Or at least in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Maybe our future selves, right, have already figured it out and are trying to teach us.
Yeah, I think we're not meant to be any further along than we are as individuals and collectively. And it's all part of the process. It's a necessary stage that we're in. But we are not aware of what we are. We refer to ourselves in a limited capacity because we think we're in a physical experience, but the physicality is a hallucination. When it comes to hallucination, there's no such thing. If you're on LSD and you're seeing like Mario Brothers jump across the room, that's just your interpretation of an energy that showed up in the room, and you're seeing it through your filter because you played Mario Brothers so much as a kid that you're seeing it shaped as that thing, but it's actual energy that showed up, or it's always been there, but for the first time, LSD made it possible for you to witness energy. Mm-hmm. But the hallucination part we call it hallucinating. So I feel really bad for schizophrenic people, is they're seeing energy all around them. Like if you see someone on the street and they're like grabbing behind them and something's tugging on their shirt. They're actually being messed with by beings that we can't see, but they can. And so we put them in a mental ward and give them drugs instead of take them to shamans that could help them.
All right.
But usually they have spent so much time on the street alone that there's no saving them anyways, even with the most advanced shaman, because they've gotten so lost. But if we there's a real dark history to the mental institutions and to psychiatry. And unfortunately, that's being kept that way on purpose because there's some nefarious forces.
And they could be healed by it.
They could be.
Yeah. One of the things that I just want to emphasize for people listening to this is that since reading Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander, he's going to be on the podcast next year and be staying at our house, and I'm really excited to host him, and we're gonna have a dinner here, and he's going to speak at the Jewish Austin Men's Group that I'm a member of. It's actually the largest gathering of Jewish men in Texas.
Wow.
So I'm really excited about that. But, he calls his near-death experience an encounter with ultra real.
Yeah.
He says it's way more real than this reality. And since reading that book, I've now had 7 friends who have told me that they've had an experience like that,
Wow.
and they never told me.
Yeah.
And I mean, here I am, 53 years old, thinking I'm a pretty nice guy, like very open, and they were afraid of what I would think about them, that I'd write them off as woo. And I wouldn't have, but they didn't know that.
Yeah.
And reading that book, I just want to relate it to what you've just said, in that I haven't had a near-death experience. I've had psychedelic experiences where I've touched what the reality is.
Mm-hmm.
But that is, I think, the ultimate experience. And I don't wish a near-death experience on anybody. I don't want anybody to have a near-death experience to experience that.
Yeah.
But the ultra real is a very real thing. I mean, I would have to assume that all 7 of my friends are lying. I would have to assume Evan Alexander is lying.
Right.
For what? For gain, and what way?
Right.
Doesn't even make sense that logically they would be lying. And that's one of the things I love so much about Mark Gober's books. And I want to end on that, because he's the one that introduced us.
Yeah. Is
that, he went so meta on the analysis to try to get to, well, what is this reality?
Yes.
And, he helps people that are skeptical, because you can find the scientific proof for the ultra real and what consciousness is. Now, we're still all grasping at it, even with that. So we need to remain humble in that. But there is a reality beyond, and we could call that heaven. We could call that source. Whatever it is, it's deeply rooted in love. And that's our soul's dominion.
Yeah, they say you get to, you reach certain gates of dreaming where you become more and more conscious, and you can go deeper and deeper into dreams. And eventually you wake up in a dream that's more real than this dream. And usually it scares you pretty bad, and all of a sudden you find yourself back in your bed because it shocks you how real it is. And so, yeah, we're just at the discovery stage, and really appreciate Mark that he doesn't jump to conclusions. When he doesn't know, he say, I don't know. And that's really helpful in the truther community. A lot of people are caught up in trying to say they know this, that, and the other. And Toltecs are pretty bold in what they claim, and I'm always try to buffer it that Toltecs say this. I'm trying to learn and understand if they're accurate. But I really believe we've yet to scratch the surface, and that there's so much more realness to interact with. And people like Mark are really helping to bridge those that are skeptical to those that are more open. And so I'm really glad that someone of his pedigree, of his past, was able to make that leap and transition from, that type of lifestyle that he was in to the one that he's now expanding into, because that's going to give people permission to do that same process. And that's what we need, is people coming over from that side of the fence that are very science-based, start to move into a more expansive spiritual process. It's just critical.
Well, I'm part of that too.
Yeah. It's good for you, man.
I'm using this megaphone that has been, hard earned to try to help humanity, try to help with the collective awakening underway, and try to help us find that light within ourselves and really get rid of the dark. Also within ourselves are trying to control us, and just let it go so that we can have a collective ascendance as humanity. And ultimately evolve to this age of abundance for all, where truly we look at each other with the divinity within us all, and with this connection to want abundance for everyone. I start out in my book talking about Chad, and how, if we can create an oasis in Chad, we can create an oasis anywhere. And I think the answer for Chad is AI and robotics, but ultimately divinely guided. It's always how we use the technology. I really, really enjoyed this, brother. This was absolutely amazing.
Thanks for having me on. Really good to meet you, and thank you for being of service in the way that you are, man.
Well, thanks so much. It means a lot coming from you. Well, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to Love Conquers Fear. As I mentioned on the last episode, about to hit the road. I leave for New York City this week, and you'll see the podcast from there. And then I'm in San Francisco the next week at TED AI and recording there as well with several of the top investors in the world. Stay tuned, and thanks again for sharing all the comments. I really appreciate it. Again, I'm not doing this for any type of capitalistic motive. I'm really doing this for deep love of humanity and to make an impact out there. In full disclosure, as I've said from the beginning, I'm also using this as an exploratory medium to ultimately find where I do want to point my arrow to help us enter that age of abundance for all. The thing that I know how to do is capitalism. I think it's an amazing organizing force, and I'm going to continue to practice in it. I've started 6 businesses and have no intention of slowing down on that. But ultimately, I'm not starting businesses until sometime next year, and I can't even predict for you what those are going to be. But I can predict for you that this medium that we're interacting in right now, which hopefully is inspiring you to do more and maybe pick up some books I've recommended, like Mark Gober's, or to start a company or join a company. You've seen a lot of great entrepreneurs on here already and a lot of great investors that you could reach out to, that helps us manifest more light in the world. So stay tuned, and thanks again. Really, really appreciate it.